Morning, everybody.
Morning.
What's going on? It is session number 10.
Woo.
That went really fast, actually.
It did. It really did.
It's like students ask me how long they've been like learning and stuff all the time. I can never remember.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I have a lot of students, but then also it's just it goes too quickly.
Yeah, I can't keep track.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we've been doing it for 10 weeks.
I know, right?
I don't know, but also, I mean, compared to when I started and what I know now, I can tell we have spent 10 weeks on it. You know, like.
You've done some good things.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun.
What do you So today we're definitely going to talk about how to practice all of that stuff.
Yes.
Get more specific, or I guess get more specific in a way where I show you how you can make your practice schedule.
Yeah.
Because my goal is not to have like a student forever. I mean, I like teaching people forever, but my goal as a teacher is to make them be able to do this stuff on their own, right? So,
right.
Your practice schedule is constantly going to be changing, depending on what your goal is, depending on what's going well, what's not. You know, so it's I want to make sure it makes sense. Because I think on a surface level, it makes sense what we've talked about, where it's like, you know, you want to change things up and you want to put yourself in different situations, but it's more about like how to do that, right?
Right, yeah.
So, over the last 10 weeks, what have you felt, what was good, and what do you feel like, I don't know, maybe is there something that you are not happy with?
Well, I'm definitely more confident when I want to learn a new song and I can listen to it and I can learn to play it on my own for sure, and like
pick it up quicker.
Yeah, and finding the key it works best for me. I don't know what my deal is, but still like trying to find count out the rhythms in my head or trying to find what it is. Like I try to do this with a few songs just listening in the car, and I feel like I can never count it out still.
Okay. So let's we'll do a few examples of that. Because what we'll do is we'll talk about there's on this practice schedule there's going to be more things than what you're going to be working on right now, but the reason I put all those categories is it shows you how most people end up dividing things up.
Okay.
It does, yeah. Like it doesn't mean you have to be working on everything at all times or anything like that. So I just want to clarify that before, because I know some people look at that and have that like oh shit moment where they kind of panic, right?
Yeah, I looked at that and I was like, oh wow, that's a lot for me to do.
But here's it, yeah. So the big thing to remember is you want to make sure you're changing things up, because like we've said, like there's that fan going, right? If you hear the same thing over and over again, you're going to tune it out. So if you're only doing, I mean, that could be literally as simple as putting a capo on just to change, you know, how you're perceiving it, right? Just like the timbre or the tone changes a bit, right? But yeah, you definitely want to be changing things up and then realize that things bleed over into each other, right? So even like with all those categories, even if you are doing my ideal schedule was 3 days that would rotate. Okay. And I hit every single thing on there and actually got a little bit more specific than that for some things. And yeah, that was apparently my story. What the hell was I going to say? But I hit everything on there, but I wasn't doing everything every day.
Right. Okay.
Right. So I might hit one thing once, but that thing I hit on Monday is going to help me understand Friday's thing better.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or makes it physically more doable. Okay. Whatever the word is, right?
Yeah.
Anything that you felt either did not go well, something that like call me out if there was something. There could be. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be something like dramatic, it's
just I need to practice more.
Sure.
So does but other than that, I feel like everything pretty much makes sense.
Okay. I guess an example of something I was kind of saying, we're gonna say was like, you could potentially be more of a different type of learner than the way that I was presenting it. So I could have done something better in that regard or whatever. So I'm always curious about that.
I gotcha.
Yeah, because everyone learns differently. That's why I like to customize everything. And
well, for sure. But I mean, each week, what we talked about, what I needed to learn, then you focus more on that. So I thought that was perfect. And if I didn't understand it, you were like, all right, let's do it this way instead.
Yeah.
And then So I think it was
cool.
You were listening.
And honestly, like, I mean, the thing that you're talking about being, I guess, for lack of a better term, the most frustrated with when you're saying, like, being able to count it out and stuff like that. What is it like? Okay, so if you're listening to a song and you're trying to count it out, do you feel like you're having a hard time finding what the pulse is? Do you feel like
I can always find the, because most of the time, like, one is like the biggest, the harder stroke or whatever. So I can always find that, but it's like, do I count? Like, I can get to 3 before I hear the thing again. And I'm like, okay, I'm counting too slow. Like, I don't necessarily. I don't know.
Okay, so here, let's just take a simple drum beat and count it in different ways, because you're probably, no, you're making it too hard.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then you're also it sounds like you're kind of combining like the beat or the pulse with the rhythm.
Probably.
And it's good to know both, because the rhythm is going to be like your strumming pattern or whatever, right? But if you get the pulse or the beat in your head, nothing else should impact that. Everything else, though, I get it.
Right.
Because it's like I'm like that dog in Up when I hear a cool drum beat. It's like, woo! And then I just, I'm supposed to be playing,
Right. And then especially if I'm like wanting to sing along with it, then I'm like, thinking about all 3 of them. Sometimes it helps with the words, and then other times I'm just like, especially if it's a new song.
Sure. I'm
just like, I don't know.
Okay, so what I'm doing here is, because I know you're not super familiar with this software, it always looks a little crazy to you. Right now, the grid is set up for quarter notes. Okay, so if I were to do like right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I'm gonna keep this super simple. But I just want to kind of show you that you can count this exact thing in multiple ways. Okay. So if we have 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So the kick drum's only on the first beat right now. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. You can hear that cymbal kind of keeping that pulse, right? That beat. If I wanted to, like, let's say for whatever reason, there are a lot of reasons this could be the case, but maybe you're picking eighth notes and not doing just easy, like, kind of just downstrokes, right? You're doing something more where you have like, you could totally count this instead of going 1, 2, 3. You could do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and right. You could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. It really doesn't matter. Like I told you, I've got that one autistic student that counted with syllables of words because he did, like, when he had 5, I like that example because it's funny, because he would say hippopotamus, in his head. So he'd be like, hippopotamus, hippopotamus, hippopotamus. You can count however the hell you want. And it's out of all the problems to have, that's probably the best one, because if you ignore it, you can still play.
Right.
But it is good to be able to, like, I guess, like, a lot of people would, or maybe you too, would wonder why it's okay to be, I mean, like, if you can play, why do you want to actually be able to count it and do all that stuff? And it's so you can put a name to what you're hearing in your head. It connects your fingers to your brain a hell of a lot more. So, like, if you know that, this rhythm is counted this way, and then when you're jamming, say you get together with Jamie and you guys are jamming again, and you kind of hear a rhythm in your head, you know exactly how to do it right away. Right? Because you don't have to, it puts a name to the ideas you have in your head. At this point, if you're, like, say, trying to write a song, and you're like, I don't know what this note's going to sound like until I hear it. Right? So it kind of, it helps make those connections. Okay? Does that make a little bit more sense? So definitely don't get distracted with all the other stuff that's going on. That's super common, and I mean I do it all the time. But since I don't know much about the copyright stuff with Twitch, I'm not gonna pull up examples now, but I'll do some with you later if you want. But yeah, just going through things, trying to count, maybe trying to visualize what like with like, not necessarily like sheet music in terms of the notes, but like for the rhythm, you know, try and visualize what the strumming pattern is, try and maybe what the drum part is, like what is he doing on the bass drum. And the reason it's kind of good to do, or it's a good idea to do that is, for me, I struggled at the beginning of college with ear training a bit because everything was based around piano, and I was not used to hearing, like, relating piano to what I was hearing. I was always doing it with guitar.
Okay.
So like on musictheory.net's a great site for like ear training and like exercises, and it's got like PowerPoint kind of presentations, but it's got things where you can say, I want to get used to what these two notes sound like together, and it'll train you on it and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's certain things, like you want to be able to put a name to it, so that way when you have an idea, either creatively or if you're trying to learn a song, you can be like, oh, that's just 1 E and a 2 and 3 and, you know, or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so if you want more examples of anything as we're going through this schedule, let me know.
Okay.
Okay. And one thing actually, let's go over to it. You do not necessarily have to practice all of these things and practice on every single one of those days. It's always better to do a little bit over the course of multiple days than it is to try and cram, right? It's like, you know, what you always heard in school for tests and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. And one thing I don't think we've really talked about is how you can keep track of your progress. Because it's super, well, I mean, actually, out of all my students, you would be the hardest for me to see the progress with, because I hear you practicing, and you I'm like with you all the time. So it's like, for me, it's hardest for me to see my own progress, because it's, it's like I don't realize how long my beard got until, even because I see it every day, right? So anyway, there's a couple ways that you can keep track of things. One would be the easiest, and this is only really for like technical things, but you could do this with, like, let's say you're doing chord changes. You could do this on a very surface level way and say, okay, I can play these chords with this strumming pattern at this like metronome speed, beats per minute, right? So, okay, I can play E minor to G at 150. It starts to fall apart wherever, and you can. And when you time yourself, don't do this like after every session or anything. People get like really crazy with this. I probably time myself once a month. Or if I was feeling frustrated, I could time myself to prove myself wrong. Okay. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something to do periodically. When you want to either check in, give yourself a little boost, or whatever. So if you're playing, like, let's say that little scale that we talked briefly about, which again, we're going to go over examples and kind of do a big overview of it all, right? But let's say that with that sort of thing, or a picking pattern, or really whatever, you can, whatever the metronome speed is, and you multiply that by how many notes you play per beat. Okay, so let's just keep it easy because I suck at math. Metronome's at 100 beats, okay? So here, actually, let's switch over to the metronome real quick. We don't need that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So right here, that's at 115. Let me put it down to just 100. Okay, so if we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I went 1 per beat, I'm playing 100 notes a minute, right? If I were playing 2, and this is a good exercise for you, because then you can practice your counting differently. So if we had 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, right? So then the eighth notes. So right there, 2 notes per beat, right? So 200 notes a minute.
Okay.
I went. It's like 400 notes a minute now because I did 4 per beat.
Okay.
You know, if I did like a 3, you know, went. Let's say. Right, 3 per beat. So. Then 300 notes a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is then whatever you're practicing, you can have an actual number that tells you this is how fast you're playing it. It's not like, oh, it doesn't feel better, or it doesn't. It's like it'll give you proof. And even if it is only like an improvement of like 5 notes a minute or something, you can still actually see, oh, it did get better. Which is nice. Makes you feel better. With things like improvisation or songs and stuff, it's not quite as specific, but you can definitely keep track and say, oh, I'm at this tempo. The full song is at this tempo, and know what to work towards. I had a side note. Let me just see if I can think of this real quick. It'll come back to me, I bet. No use just sitting here like a moron trying to figure it out. Okay, so let's go through this and kind of talk about the different ways you can divide this up. And like I said, so that way you can do more on your own and adjust it. Obviously I'll help you, but so I have every day there. And this is a very surface level kind of practice schedule. What you would do is get more specific in each of those categories.
Okay.
As little or as much as you need. So for me, if I got too focused and was like timing myself on every scale shape and everything like that, it took up a lot of time. I didn't have fun with it, and it was like it was too tedious, and I didn't really want it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to figure out like how detailed you want to get. Okay.
Okay.
So just let's go through these categories, make sure they make sense what they mean.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about like what you do with them. Okay.
Right.
So 2 hands sync. That's making your hands work better together.
Mm-hmm.
So normally, where you are now, that would be probably more in picking patterns, I would assume.
Yeah.
So doing a variety of picking patterns would be your way of doing the 2 hand sync right now.
Okay.
Later on, when you're talking about more specific ways of picking and stuff, I might, doing like a. As you can see, I can go like crazy with my picking, right? So there's like very specific things you can do, but yeah, for right now, it's just, and if you notice something where your hands are just off, especially probably, like I said, picking or individual note things. Mm-hmm. Like if you were doing that scale, maybe you would go, like a lot of times people pick faster than this hand.
Yeah.
Or this hand is going actually faster, so you'll hear like, it's supposed to be just 2 notes, but they went, picked it too late kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just sloppiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, synchronization. Arpeggios. So do you know what an arpeggio is? Like the definition? I don't even know if
I couldn't tell you the definition. For sure.
It's a fancy word for playing a chord 1 note at a time.
Okay.
So when you are doing picking patterns on guitar, like let's say, that is not an arpeggio, that is an arpeggiating. Okay?
Okay.
An arpeggio is 1 at a time kind of thing. That's where you see like the spider kind of fingers. Right, so that's an arpeggio. Right now, for you, it would be more arpeggiating.
Okay.
So playing the chord, just like letting it ring.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to talk about how these group together, because even though that's something that seems kind of foreign, I'm assuming, it's something that you can do stuff with.
Okay.
Aural skills, training your ear.
Oh, okay.
It always felt weird saying oral skills. So anyway, that would be like musictheory.net. You could train yourself, because there's certain things that sound like perfect pitch is when you can hear anything and you know what note it is. Relative pitch is when you know, okay, I started on an E note. I know we're in minor, so I can figure out the rest,
Okay.
That's like where you want to get, right? But your ear training, I mean, like certain intervals, distances between notes have different sounds. So like if I go a half step, 1 fret, sounds like Jaws, right? If I do a sixth, 6 notes higher, sounds like NBC. Or so one of my students was doing that. You've heard that before, but do you know what it is? Home Depot's theme from their latest marketing campaign. So that's how he remembered it. I had that one student. I might have told you he works at Jewel, and he heard this cherry advertisement that he loved, and so that's how he remembers certain things now. It really, I mean, it honestly could be anything.
Yeah.
And it's normally things that are like burned into your brain, right? Mm-hmm. So like, Here Comes the Bride is 4 notes. So no matter where, if I go here, it's always that sort of thing. So that's what ear training is like getting you to be able to hear like, like when I listen to a song and like people will be like, how'd you figure that out? Or have you played this before? And I haven't. Mm-hmm. It's just because I figured out what the first chord was, and you can kind of do that already. It's like, that sounds kind of like a G. Mm-hmm. And you'll get better and better at that. So,
gotcha.
And ear training is one of the things that most people end up overlooking. So you want to make sure that you do some of it, but don't, at this point, you're not going to be diving in being like, oh, it's a minor 7th to the, right? You're not going to do that.
I don't think I will ever do that.
Yeah. So chords, the way you would, that could be practicing new shapes. It could be practicing shapes that you've done before. It could be categories of things. So like working on the bar chords, working on, chords with open strings, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. That also, like I said, things are going to combine. We talked a bit about the music theory stuff, which was all about the chords. Mm-hmm. So you're going to group these things so they're similar, and it makes it easier for you to build those like neural pathways and get the momentum in your session.
Yeah.
So the chords, a lot of times what ends up happening to people is they think about too many categories as like one. So like if I said practice your chords, a lot of times people would assume, okay, I have to be right doing everything. Mm-hmm. Chords is literally just focusing on the chords. So your left hand.
Okay.
Rhythm is going to be literally focusing on this, unless of course you're doing like something crazy. But like your rhythm would be like, okay, let's say I go. That's my rhythm. Okay. So I could do that like, right? I could do something like that, but I could go. Right? So it's just slower tempo, but the same rhythm, right? Right. So that would be with the Winning Rhythms book, or like making one up. This would be a great thing for you to do, would be to go both directions with the rhythm, especially since this was the area that you said was a little bit less comfortable or confident, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to go both directions. You want to write a rhythm and then go ahead and perform it, and then you want to be able to listen to them and like analyze. So like you could practice without your guitar on the way to work or something, right? You could be commuting there and listening to some song that you like and being like, what does it sound like, If there's one that's difficult, like I'm just thinking, because I know you were like listening to Mumford & Sons recently, like with the banjo and all that, like the really distracting kind of fast picking stuff, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time the guitar is like it's got that sort of thing. But there are definitely times where I think they have another guitar player picking quickly and stuff like that. If you're like, oh, I kind of can visualize it, but I can't really hear it because it's too fast. There's software that can slow things down. If you look it up on YouTube, you can just do it right there in the settings.
Oh.
And just slow it down to like 75% or something.
Okay.
My thought from before came back.
Nice.
The other thing I was going to say, when you're practicing anything, it's good to practice to push your speed, but most of the time you're probably going to want to practice at like say 90%. Okay, so let's pretend like I'm just going to make up, let's say, 100% is your maximum, right? if you bump that, like say let's speed with whatever song or exercise you're playing, right? If you're playing at your absolute maximum speed, it's really hard to focus on making it better, because all of your energy is just like, oh shit, I gotta go fast, I gotta do this, right?
Right.
So if you slow it down just a little bit, so say on the metronome you're at 150, it could be as just 145 or 140 or whatever you need to do, but most of the time when you're practicing, you want to be a little bit on slower than the full blast, just so you can actually have the energy to fix what's going on.
Gotcha.
You know, if you feel confident with it, just go for it. But this is like, if you want to practice, it's almost like you're practicing for your endurance of it.
Okay.
To be more consistent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sprinters are different than distance runners. It's the same kind of idea, I guess. So, random side note, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay, composition. Being creative, essentially. Write stuff. That can be a bit overwhelming at first, for sure, right? It doesn't have to be like you have to write a song on every Wednesday or something like that, right? But it could be, I'm going to put together a chord progression and a rhythm, and that's how you're practicing it now. Okay. You could if you have a hard time starting, real quick, we'll talk about the 7 elements of music, just so because you'll hear these terms a lot. Okay. But any of those 7 elements could be a starting point for composition, or you could just give yourself something weird to do, like, oh, I have to use this note somehow. How are you going to use this note when you're playing? Moving around, right? Okay, so elements of music are just the parts of music that build all songs, essentially. Okay, and they're just they're like the building blocks, and they're just good to think about because they can be a great creative starting point. And most people only start with one of 2 of them. Okay, so melody, part that stands out, right? Most of the time it's singing, or it could be something you're noodling around with, on guitar, whatever. That's one element. Harmony is the other one that people gravitate towards. Harmony is anything that supports the melody. So on guitar, it's your chords. If you think about it, you're playing a bunch of harmonies to make the chord happening, right? More than one note. Right. Then you have rhythm, and again, it's separate from harmony. So rhythm is exactly whatever you're doing, the duration of the notes. Then you have dynamics. How loud or intense, like how intense something is versus how like mellow it is. Okay. That 28 Days Later song I did, that zombie movie song or whatever. That song and a lot of others that Clint Mansell composer do, it's like 3 chords for like 8 minutes, but it stays interesting because of the dynamics. Gotcha. And you could practice dynamics. We talked a bit about this, but putting on a drum beat and like playing more intense or bringing it back down, right? Right. Okay, so we've got those. What was that, 4? We also have texture, how the layers are, and like we were saying, with you wanting to focus more on like figuring out what those rhythms are, picking one texture, so the hi-hat on the drums or the strumming pattern or the bass or whatever, right? And thinking of that, that's the texture, how things are layered in. Timbre, Timbre, is how something sounds. So like the tone of that guitar is different than this one. So if you feel stuck, maybe you think, oh, I want it to be an electric part or something. Okay. And then I think that's 6, right? Yeah. Melody, harmony, rhythm, dynamics, texture, timbre. And then the final one, which I don't pay any attention to most of the time, is form. Okay. That's the order, like verse chorus kind of thing. Oh. Sometimes people like to think that way. I only do that. I mean, clearly I don't with my music, but if I'm writing for a singer or something, then I do for sure. But anyway, little side note, but those are just some good things to think about. Especially when you're being creative. But if you're ever, again, that's another way of like making things more exciting. If you're feeling like, oh, this is really lame. How do I make this? You might find it. I like the sound of this chord, but it sounds stupid if I just go. How do I, change it? Okay. So combining techniques. This one, at this point would be more situational, like something pops up where it's like, oh, it's really hard for me to go from playing a melody to strumming again, or something like that. It's more, I would say, for a while it'll be more lead guitar focused, so it's not going to be something you'll be doing too much of right now. But like as an example, for me, one thing I sucked at was playing something quick or focusing on and then being able to do a bend or vibrato. Okay. So I always make fun of myself because I would play something that would say something really cool, and then it sounds like a mosquito, right? So I had to work on combining those two things because that came up and I didn't realize how bad I was at it. It wasn't until actually, a couple people had called me out. Like if you watch like that DVD where I look like a child, well, I was young, right?
You were a child.
Yeah, so that first DVD I did, it was not good.
I got you.
I didn't realize it until like I started really analyzing my stuff, and then people called me out on it.
I gotcha.
People started booing. I'm not exaggerating.
Really?
Not like in a concert. It was Jeff.
Oh.
Boom. Okay. So yeah, combining techniques, pretty obvious. Music theory. What we had talked about before. And then, like I said, it starts off explaining the key, and then it gets to a point where you're breaking the rules.
Right. Okay.
And making things sound more dramatic or whatever you're looking for.
I don't break rules.
Just kidding, you will. Pieces or etudes, however you want to say it. So pieces, songs, right?
Okay.
An etude is essentially a song that's written for a specific idea, like a technique.
Okay.
So it's like normally they're pretty sweet sounding. Like you might have like I don't know, like let's say something. Let's say that's my little technique I'm trying to practice. That little, it's called a pivot pattern. Okay. So that's sort of, you've heard that in all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So if that, like, I would have a song that sounds cool, but it's all based on that. So I might have like. Right, just that sort of thing. So normally they're for techniques. But anyway, songs, that sort of thing. Scales and modes, so the individual stuff more. Scales, like the normal key, 7 notes, like we were talking about. A mode is just doing that same scale, but just starting on a different one of the notes.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be like if I were playing G major, for example. G notes, I would start there. But if I wanted to play a mode, I could play like something with B, and it has a different B. Okay. With those, we only talked about that one, the pentatonic one. In that pentatonic, because there's 5 notes, there's 5 modes.
Okay.
So it's just, you have a different shape for each starting point, so you can play all over the whole neck. Okay. So scales and modes. And this would be a good one to kind of explain how you can practice it differently. You could do.
What time is it at?
Well, yeah, what time? What's the timestamp? 41.
All right.
That's the second time though.
I know. I tried to look the other time and I couldn't find the time.
But like just as like if you're only talking about scales and scales as a technical practice time is I guess what I'm trying to say. You could do it where you play one shape with your left hand, but you do a bunch of different patterns. So maybe all kinds of whatever, that sort of thing. Or you could do it where the same pattern, but you move this around more. So you can kind of like different days, whatever you feel you need to work on.
Yeah.
Soloing. Right now that would probably be more like incorporating some little melodies into your, so like if you had like Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, right, like getting those little melodies and stuff in there.
Yeah.
Or the beginning of that Mumford song where right?
I haven't practiced.
You should try that again because you've gotten a hell of a lot better since then.
True.
Yeah.
Try it again.
Yeah, that could be one of the little, like, and with the pieces, like, I never really was someone, because I was always more interested in this creative side. Mm-hmm. I didn't do tons and tons of covers. a lot. But I would learn a lot. Like, oh, that was a really cool melody. How did you make that happen? Like,
Okay.
you know, the
Yeah.
things I liked, I would do.
For sure.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole song. It is good, it would probably be a good thing for you to pick out like a bunch of songs and be able to play them straight through, right?
Mhm.
But yeah. So improvisation, that could be with that melody, and you know we'll be talking more about this. You know, it's not something we got super deep with yet, but making up the melodies and solos. But it could also be, all right, ready? Improvise based on a G chord, right? So you just. And so like when you practice doing that, and this is like with the jamming thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Dun dun
I
dun.
don't want to. Okay.
I don't want to. All right, this is what you're gonna have to do. Just choose 2 chords that you're comfortable with. Okay.
You're like, oh, get it on the right string.
You sure you're comfortable? All right, no. I want you to, at whatever tempo, but start with something real basic. Okay, so let's just say you start with. Okay, so purposely start with whatever. Okay, you're not allowed to stop playing this. You're starting improvising. Start making it more interesting, however you see fit. With the picking?
Yeah, like how would I?
There's no right or wrong, but really you just you're still switching the chords in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
But think about how.
There's a lot in this one.
Yeah. Think about how busy you want it, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'll give you the example. Let's go back to that drum beat. Right? So if I wanted like. But here's this is where a lot of people get tripped up. If you watch someone play live, I guarantee you, especially live, but like people don't necessarily play it the exact same way over and over again. So like when I give you a strumming pattern, it tells you at the beginning of a song, this is the strumming pattern for the verse, this is the one for the chorus. It's like the foundation, but it's not necessarily all the details.
Okay.
You know? So if we had like. I could have and changing it up, right? So with the picking, I think the big thing, like here, try doing this. Strum on the first beat. So let's just go like, so right there. Whatever you want, picking in between two. Try building it in a little bit. Yeah, so just and the point is don't feel like it's okay to very slowly build it. The point in this case, because you're improvising and working that problem solving part of your brain, is not to stop. Okay, so even if you cut it down to just like let's just say I went. Now, what should I add? So, do you want me to pick? Do you want me to do more strumming? Okay, so I'll start doing it on the next round. So I could do it. If I need to, okay, I know I want to think or I want to pick. It's okay to take the time to think. As long as right, that's a little boring still though. I'm gonna strum it once, and I want you to fill it in with the cool stuff. Okay. So 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, go. Don't stop. Don't stop.
I feel like.
Do you feel like you need to plan it more? Is that what the feeling is right now? Like because you didn't plan it, it's like
I feel stupid because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
like
I get it. But you played multiple cool ideas. When you watch it back, you played multiple good ideas there. Mm-hmm. And normally what happens is in a song, it'll be one idea that they'll keep, like the foundation keeps going, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're doing this, like I said, the goal is to not stop. It's super awkward, I get it. But you went... I'm doing 2 measures each. If I just need to add only... There you go. So I'm going to strum it. Let's try this one. So I kind of did while I was doing the, let's say, boring version. So I'm in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go strum 1, 2, 3. I was doing a C. Yeah, but that's cool. Just do your thing. Try it again. Does that make a little bit more sense, though?
Yeah.
So in the moment, like, there were times when I would be playing this where it would take me like maybe a minute to figure out where the fuck I wanted to go.
Right.
Because I'd just be like, I don't even remember the chord.
Right.
Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I would have to keep playing that.
Yeah.
Either while I remember it, but again, I'm a big fan of cheat sheets. So you would have all this out in front of you. So then you're like, oh, okay, I'm improvising. Maybe you're going to change up your chord progression, try and make it like a verse and chorus with no rehearsal. So you can go like, let's say... Like I said, the point in this type of thing is not stopping.
Gotcha.
There's a time for sure when you want to practice for perfection, but this is where you build those pathways where like that's sort of saying where it's like musicians are better at math. It's really just because they're better at using both hemispheres of their brain together.
Gotcha.
The logical problem solving. How do I make this chord not sound like shit? How do I, pick this? What's my rhythm? All that stuff. And being creative at the same time.
Yeah.
I
also feel because world might watch me. So I'm like,
oh, for sure.
I don't know enough for that. If it were just you and me, I think it would be a little. I wouldn't be. So much.
I totally get it. It's I said this before, but I've just made a fool of myself so many times live, and I saying stupid things, just like stuttering or falling, whatever, on stage. I've just done so much of that stuff that it's like, I don't care anymore, So I have a different level of relaxing than you have at this point, right?
I have always really been behind the scenes.
Yeah. Sure.
So like,
I gotcha.
It's just nerve-wracking, but good for me.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, there's gonna be like that red light syndrome, like as soon as the record button, or as soon as and that actually brings up a good point. I think I might have told you, just in case someone else is watching needs to hear this. Like we were talking about timing yourself, right, and seeing what you're gonna work on, or what you need to work on based on that. And like, I had this one student that this has happened with a lot of people, but the one that stands out was, let's say he was working on techniques, right? So he was doing some fast stuff, right? And I don't remember the exact number, but every time the metronome got to 150, he started messing up like crazy. And you could see him gradually get more and more like tense the closer 150 got.
Okay.
Because he had messed up at that tempo before, he kind of anticipated that was going to happen. So as soon as I took the metronome and didn't tell him what we started at and just gradually increased it, he was at like 180. But like it was that one little mental thing that was throwing him off, you know? So it's, they're like, you need to pay attention, but you need to also like just relax, right?
Right.
You don't need to have all the answers right away.
Yeah.
You know, if like here's an example. In jazz, we had rehearsals, but they were more just like jams, right? So you would show up for that or to the gig, and sometimes for the gigs we would pre-plan. We want to play Donna Lee and Autumn Leaves or whatever, Misty. But most of the time it would be like either requests or it would be like, all right, let's play. So what? Let's do it in B flat. All right, count us in, and then we would just go. Like no rehearsal. But the only thing that would be kind of understood would be you'd play the melody a few times, and then you'd comp it, playing the chords and stuff, and then they would improvise their solos, and then we'd maybe play the melody, and then end the song. Okay? But like, what happened for me is when I first started doing jazz, I only knew some really basic types of shapes. So I would have like, sounds okay. But I wouldn't have been able to do like all the like the crazier ones. You know, that kind of stuff. So what I would do is when I started playing it, because like I said, it wasn't like I had I knew what song to practice and stuff. It was just do it.
Yeah. So
I would start off by maybe going right, and then maybe I'd start fleshing it out even more as I felt comfortable.
Gotcha. Okay.
You can just think about like the whole time you should just be asking yourself, how can I make this more interesting, or what do I want to change? Yeah. You know, maybe like that Trains song I recommended you learn.
Yeah.
You got it. So maybe that song is a little intimidating right now, but maybe what you need to do is just work on. You know that a good song for you might be the Foo Fighters song "Times Like These." Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, times like these you learn. I'll show it to you. But the little tagline is. That'd be a really good one for you. Little side note. But okay, so then that makes sense, I think. Then tapping, probably not doing much of that right now, but that's the. So tapping, just a little side thing about that. Tapping is one of those things where if you want to do it, it's great. But if you're spending a ton of time focusing on tapping, it's not helping as wide of a variety of areas in your playing. Okay. You might get better at hammer-ons and pull-offs and muting and the actual tapping technique, but it's not like and like maybe like applying some of the theoretical stuff, but tapping is more specific. So depending on what your goals are at the time, you know. Yeah. But okay, so now let's actually talk about making that schedule then. Okay. I just wanted that was a long thing for all of that, but I think it's useful. Yeah. Especially since it's the last one for now.
Here's fall.
Okay, so my ideal schedule, like I said, was 3 days. Everyone's different. Okay. So for you, let me just throw this. It'll be a little bit different, but let's say on Monday, you could do arpeggios. Here, let me actually do this. Oopsies. Can you tell I never use Excel? Stupid. Okay, so arpeggios, which is like, again, playing chords one at a time, right? Chords, rhythm, and let's say improvising, like we were just doing. Okay? So all of those like they're all doing the same idea. Okay. And you can have overlap, and it makes it more manageable, so you're not like doing an entirely new exercise for everything. You can build momentum in your practice. So using this as the example, pick your chord or chords that you want to work on, whatever that might be. Okay, so maybe one day it's bar chords, maybe the next day it's, or you know, during your session you change it up. But let's just say we did E minor and C. Okay, so going back to that. Okay, so I might start by just, chords, E minor, C. That's established. Then what's my rhythm? Let's say we did that down, down, up, up, down, up. So the quarter and then eighth notes with those tied. Okay, so that could be my rhythm. And like I said, you're not going to be doing those like that sort of thing, but you would do the arpeggio like arpeggiating it, and you could do that same rhythm. And then you can improvise, put a drum beat on, take that foundation, and improvise around it.
Right. Okay.
There's a lot of ways you can build it up and keep gradually. It makes it easier to digest, I think. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that could be like an example of one day. Let's say then on Tuesday, we'll say the synchronization. Like I was saying for you, that would probably be the scale, some picking patterns, but we'll say more on that along those lines. Oh, and I should have said this. Oh, actually, we're going to do something a little different. Sorry. I changed my mind. But yeah, two-hand synchronization, like the scales would be great. And then like soloing and improvising based on that. Okay. Which we'll talk, like I said, this is something that you will get into with us, real soon. So, but those are, again, similar. So mentally, everything that we're doing here is going to end up being pretty managed, like similar. One thing that a lot of people jack up is they'll do like, okay, I'm doing like this technique over here, and then I'm going to be doing something with rhythms, and then I'm going to be doing, and it's too all over the place. Okay. You don't build the momentum and really like get that deeper understanding. It's like a lot of people that do that tend to, and it does work for some people, but most people that do that tend to be only like surface level with their understanding of things. Okay, so did all of that, and then let's say ear training. So again, that could be put on a song and try and write out what the rhythm is. Okay. Or write out your own rhythm and do that. But like, so ear training for that. Trying to you could try and figure out maybe look up the first chord and then try and see what might go with it. Because if you have a G chord, probably there's a C somewhere, probably a D. There's always a D somewhere. Okay, so yeah, you could do like a little bit of the ear training thing maybe. But this one, maybe what you do is you focus on the creative side. Okay. So you do the music theory stuff. So maybe you pick your key, like we were talking about, you spell out, do all the work. But then you spend the time getting really creative with, just give yourself a goal. I want to write something that sounds, spooky. Right? Obviously, I didn't come up with that. Okay, so you're doing all that kind of stuff, right? And then let's say. And this is, like I said, this is an example of how you can break things up. Right there, you covered pretty much everything. If you were to do like the songs, you could do it every day, where maybe you have your focused practice time at the beginning, doing the specific scale or whatever, picking patterns and stuff, and then you have a song after the songs you jam on afterwards. I think that's what would work best, knowing you. For me, it was I had to do the technical stuff first, because otherwise I wouldn't be motivated, to after. It was always more fun being creative, so or jamming out on stuff. I wouldn't want to do it, So yeah. So that's like one way you could divide it up, and then like you could repeat that, and then like I said, so Monday, like in that case, Monday would be the same as Thursday, and but you would do it in a different way. So even though you're practicing, picking out the chords and rhythm again, do it with a different rhythm. Or if you need to, you could keep the rhythm consistent and change your chords each time you practice it, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of trial and error, but you'll keep track of what's working for you. That I mentioned this to some other people, but that practicing ebook is great. It has a lot of resources and stuff. I haven't even given it to you. I'll give it to you, or you have it. You have access to it.
I do.
But yeah, you can check out that because that might be there. It was a 6-week class, but it's presented in a way where it's just like, it's not like you have to sit down and read it, but it's like, oh, I'm really fucking this up. How do I get better at this part?
Gotcha.
And then you can just be like, okay, there's like a chapter only on the mental side of things. There's a chapter on like the physical side of things. There's breaking it up and everything. So
yeah,
it's more of like a resource than it is sit down and read it kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so for me, I did 3 days. Sunday or whatever the 7th day was, I just had it as a free day or like a review if there was something in particular that I was having a difficult time with.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I feel like and the one thing too, like I said, is it's totally fine to make this less busy. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's just do an example of that real quick. Get rid of these. So if you were to make this, let's say, more spread out, okay? Let's say, oops, I don't want that. Okay, so let's say we have the synchronization with the scales, and then the next day maybe you improvise with those scales. Okay, so you have just the technique day, just the creative day for it. And then you have your chords and music theory, right? And those go together, and you only focus on that. And then maybe the next day you do rhythm and like the ear training for the rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day you do like a combination of those. So then it just depends on how much focus you think you need. I feel like as you get more stuff that you're working on, you're going to have it where it's more spread out and you're not hitting the exact same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Does that make a little bit more sense then?
Yeah.
Breaking it all down. I know it was long-winded and everything, but I figured kind of going over that way. Do you have any questions on that? Or something that you feel like you're still like unsure of, like how to go about? Or do you feel, because like I said, this is kind of a starting point,
Right. Yeah. I feel like there's a question in there somewhere, but I don't know how to voice it.
Okay. Question about like, what is it? It's about a specific part of that, like a specific category and how to practice it. Is it?
No, I think it's like getting like the resources together, like everything that I need to practice this on this day, and then like how long should I practice?
Okay.
Why,
So like I said, yeah. So for how long? Obviously more is better, but you have to think about how much is focused versus, because practicing is not the same as playing.
Right.
Okay, so playing is like just doing stuff that you're comfortable with, and
Right.
Or things that are not like really challenging you. Yeah, practicing is being active and focused on a certain thing, right?
Okay.
So I would say for you, I would say for most people, it's good to shoot for like say 30 minutes most days of the week.
Okay.
So let's say like 5 days a week, you do 30 minutes of focus practicing, and that on like the specific categories, like maybe just like 30 minutes on just picking, or on chords and rhythm, or whatever. Like I said, you can group things that are similar, but you do that, and then you can play however much else you want. But you just make it so you have, and practicing is something you have to practice, so sometimes, like, even for me, if I haven't been actively practicing, I'm starting to get into it to build, like with the songwriting for my album, I I need to get my chops up to play some of the ideas that I have really well. So I'll be doing that. But like for me, if I were to sit down for like an hour and practice, I mean, I could do it, but that would probably, it's like working out, right? If you start, you have to build your way up, right? So if a half an hour is unmanageable, and I mean, especially for kids, that can be unmanageable, just with their attention span. But like, if you can do 10 minutes focused, let's say before work, 10 minutes focused before dinner, one more time before night, like just whatever you can do focused. Gotcha. And it's probably going to be different for each subject, but let me keep me posted on that, Okay.
But that what you said, practicing is different than playing. That is a big thing, because I'm just like, I play all the time. Why, and then I'm like, well, I'm not focusing on a certain skill, so that.
And it's like, if it helps, you could always have it. Like, let's say you were working on like that beginning of the Cave song, right? Where you've got that little slide and the picking and stuff like that. You could work on slides and picking focused, and then do that song at the end of it, like kind of group what song you work at the end with what you were practicing. Okay. Or that could be simply the exercise that you're using to practice it. It depends on what you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, practicing is super different. I think that book will help you when you like kind of reckon like, oh, I do this. A lot of people fall into their comfort zone, and so like with that improvising thing, like that's so awkward at first.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is like I said, you're training a different part of your brain. And if there are plenty of people that are great at playing what's written, and then they can't do the other way. There's some people that are the other way around. There's it's all about getting balanced, right? And and I think the improv thing is huge for helping people relax.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because it helps you get that confidence.
Yeah. Okay.
So you asked about time. What was the other thing you just asked about? Oh shit. No, I'll have to watch it back and. Is what your question?
Getting all the resources.
Oh, resource. Yeah. So we were talking about like getting a folder together, right? Yeah. I'll show you one of mine. Okay. But I have it divided up into those categories.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then what I would do is I would have on the front page, I had this, and then my NPM chart or notes per minute, like
progress chart.
Progress chart. Yeah. Thank you. And actually, there in the ebook, there's that stuff already like kind of mapped out.
Okay.
There's like charts and stuff you can use. Cool. There's also a lot of like blank charts and stuff. So like if you're like I said, cheat sheets, and if you're being creative, write it down so you don't forget it. That happens to me all the time. I'll figure out the third chord, and then I'm like, oh, I don't remember the first one. So so divide up your folder, binder, whatever, into those categories. Okay. And then as you see what works well for you, you'll just get more and more organized. It's the same thing like with my recording process. Like I do it very differently than other people. But it's like over time I found what gets my ideas out the fastest way possible. Right. And then I do like not perfect, but just get the ideas out and make sure it's what I want, and then I can focus on the better stuff later. So
gotcha.
Cool. How's that feeling?
Good.
Yeah.
Feel better about practicing and how to focus and stuff. So that'll be good.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel like this, but a lot of people feel like when they look at something like this, like they feel like they need to do it too much. Like I didn't practice right because I didn't do all of this stuff.
Right.
And there were plenty of times where I practiced literally for an hour straight on one scale shape and one pattern. So if you need to get that focused, go for it. I think the ebook too helps because it shows you how you can challenge yourself or strip it down and go the other way, whatever you need in that moment to make it manageable.
Right.
Because most of the time people are like, fuck, and then they quit. They're just like, I'm not going to do this anymore, and then they go back to playing, not practicing.
Right. Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. I have to say too that there were some weeks where it was just like, oh, I didn't practice enough. I shouldn't even come, or I shouldn't even do this today. Like,
that would have been hilarious
right?
if like it was
Sorry, guys.
time to stream and you just bailed.
I didn't practice
You're
enough.
over it. You're eating
You
breakfast.
But like that was the feeling I had.
Yes.
Like, I didn't do it perfectly, so I can't even come and learn something else. But it all works together. So it's like, it builds on each other. Yes.
And think about
but you don't want to like miss out on something because that might be something easier, and then you can come back to it, or it might help you with understanding the others.
Yeah, that's a good point. I totally understand where that feeling comes from, where people are like, oh, I didn't perfect this, so what's the point of going? But like, the thing so when I'm making lesson plans for students, the thing they don't realize is it's not just one path that we're taking, right? We're working on all these different categories, and I'm adjusting it to their goals as we're going through it and stuff like that. So there are plenty of times where I'll present an idea and it's like focus on this as a technique, and then we'll start talking about application later,
right?
Or even like think about like even now you haven't even gotten super deep into any theory or any of this other stuff, right? But when we started this beginner series, Jesus, all right, that wasn't even for a reason. It was just like anyway. When we started this, like, you knew the G chord. But as we've done this more, now you have a little bit more of an understanding that why there are different types of G chords. You understand more like what you can do picking wise with that G chord. You understand the theory behind it, how it's like, those 3 notes, and then you just have duplicates, and that's why you can do the same thing. But if I were to add that sort of thing. So no matter how good you get, there's always some extra layer of understanding that you're going to get over sometimes even the most basic, kind of concept.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is killer.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, you sound great. We didn't do as much playing today, but
no, that was
good.
That was
a good conclusion for the summer.
Yeah.
Thing. Anyone watching, you guys should, like I said, email me if you want that ebook, but you should let me know what you guys would want to see. I'm toying around with a bunch of ideas. I'm obviously doing the streams for my album, and I'm going to up those. I'm going to add I'm at weeknight, and I'm going to add, I might even just start streaming at this time for my solo album next week or something.
Okay.
But I'd be interested to see what you guys would want to hear or watch.
Yeah.
Be a part of, I guess is a better way, because it's toying around. I was thinking about maybe doing songwriting, but it's based off of what you guys are recommending.
Yeah.
So we could take a concept and write songs based on what you want, or just so we can get like more of the application side of the music stuff. I think that could be fun.
Yeah.
We could always do like a technique boot camps. We could do really whatever.
Yeah.
So let me know. I would love to hear about that. I'm always happy to help however I can.
Yeah. Maybe we'll just have some jamming sessions every once in a while too.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Depending on people's internet connections, you can do those pretty well. With other people too.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be, especially with the album, there's going to be some live streams of like the CD release and some other things I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, awesome. Appreciate the support, everybody.
Yeah. Good to be here
Much
with you guys.
love. If you want to see Jen doing more lessons, we'll just tell us.
Yeah.
We'll
Just
end
let
up.
us know.
I'm sure we're going to end up doing more at some point,
I'm
but
sure.
we wanted to give this a conclusion for the summer.
Yep.
And put like a little punctuation so people kind of get an idea of what they should be starting with. But definitely hit me up with questions and practice hard.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.